we'll come back to that. China. The late foreign policy analyst Henry Rowan, writing in 1996, that year is important, 1996, quote, "When will China become a democracy? The answer is around the year 2015. This prediction is based on China's steady and impressive economic growth, which in turn fits the pattern of the way in which freedom has grown in Asia and elsewhere in the world," close quote. First economic growth, then democracy. Not a crazy suggestion. It worked in South Korea, and then it worked in Taiwan. But of course, the prediction that China would become a democracy in 2015 today looks preposterous. Why didn't it work in China?
You know, it's again, why questions are always hard to answer. It's one cut I always have on China was that they learned from the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and they were going to have perestroika without glasnost. They were going to have a certain liberalization of the economy without becoming a sort of free and open society. There certainly were a lot of indications well before 2015 that it wasn't quite trending that way. You know, you had a great firewall around China where the big U.S. internet companies didn't have any effective presence in China. 2010, 2005, 2000, it was pretty effectively walled off. And if you ask people in Silicon Valley circa 2005 or 2010, there was still some Fukuyama inevitability law that China would have to open up to the U.S. tech companies. It wasn't obvious why that was true, even in 2005 or 2010. But I think somehow there's always a question how much of these things are personal or structural. So there's a personal version where you can say that there's something unusually crazy about Xi, that he's the second coming of Stalin or Genghis Khan or something like this. And then there's maybe it's not personal to Xi. Maybe it's just structural, that China could be moderately free, not completely totalitarian, as long as the economy was growing 8% a year. And at the point when that slowed down, and all exponential things eventually slow, you had to actually clamp down a lot more. That once China grows at 3 or 4% a year, and the growth is uneven, it's actually going to become more authoritarian, more totalitarian, something like that.
Let me try two quotations on you here. The historian Stephen Kotkin, whom you know, when asked to name his main finding after a lifetime of studying in the Soviet archives, quote, "They were communists," close quote. President Xi Jinping of China, he's speaking to the Central Committee in 2013. This is a speech the Chinese republished in 2019, and that, as far as I can tell from looking at the internet, American analysts discovered in 2020. Xi Jinping in 2013 to the Central Committee. "There are people who believe that communism is an unattainable hope, but facts have repeatedly told us that Marx and Engels' analysis is not outdated. Capitalism is bound to die out," close quote. So, in the conflict with China, to what extent are we facing just another great power struggle? But this was always the question with the Soviet Union, right? Oh, it's just another great, no, it isn't. They're different because they're communists. Same question for China.
Yeah, I would agree with that we need to take it more seriously at face value.
Right.
They say they're communist. We should just take that
Why argue with them?
We should take that at least at face value. There probably are a lot of sub-questions one can ask. So maybe they're not strictly Marxist, but they are strictly Leninist. And so it is sort of this totalitarian one-party structure. Maybe there are elements of it that are also fascist, where the Prague Spring was communism with the human face, and maybe China is fascism with a communist face, or something like that. And then, of course, there are some ways in which it's also different from fascism and communism in the early 20th century forms, where both fascism and communism were fundamentally youth movements. And then China is kind of a gerontocracy, and so it's sort of
distinctive.
So it's it's sort of a half fascist, half communist gerontocracy. It's strangely much less idealistic or ideological, I think, than the Soviet Union. It strikes me that people probably don't really believe in any of these ideas. They have to sort of be forced down in a very strange way. So there's certainly a lot of things that are unique and different, but yet taking it as a communist country at face value, we could do much worse than that.
All right. Grand strategy.